My name is Jessie Wright. I am connected to NAMI Sacramento. I am a trainer with one of their programs, peer-to-peer. I'm also a presenter for their program, which is In Our Own Voices. Also, Crisis Intervention Team. I do that one. I'm a facilitator for two of their programs for connections as well as family support groups. I volunteer a lot with them. So that's really how I'm connected with NAMI. Well, leave it to my family. There was always something going on with me. They said my behavior was such that, in a sense, if they could have killed me when I was a teenager, they would have. I didn't consider my behavior odd or anything, but according to them and listening to them, there are some behaviors that I exhibited that was just odd. One particular they've told me about was that I ran away and I hid in the pasture. We lived in the country. And I laid against this log that was falling down. They couldn't find me. My grandmother sent them to find me. And that happened several times. But one particular time they remembered that I laid against a log and they couldn't find me until the next morning. And I never considered the fact that there were snakes, bugs, and all those things. I can't stand those things. I'm deathly afraid of snakes. So I can't even imagine I did that. It's like, are you serious? So there were just several times that they said that to them, my behavior was odd. So I can't remember, of course, totally. In school, there were some challenges, but in my culture, you never consider that as challenges. It's like, get over it. What's wrong with you? Or either there a time, of course, you were physically disciplined for things because it wasn't considered anything abnormal, just behavior, or typical behavior. The thing I know that really did affect it was that I made decisions that were very uncommon for me to make. Deciding early on that I was gonna just leave home because I didn't like what was going on or how I was being treated. So I felt like I was being mistreated. So I ended up leaving home young, got married, and eventually got into drugs. That, of course, totally affected my relationships with not only my biological family, but other people's as well. Getting older, got more involved in drugs on my own. And that caused me and my children to experience a lot of challenges. Divorce, separation, a lot of relationships that I shouldn't have been in, bad choices, to the point that eventually with my children we became homeless. My oldest child ended up having to basically take care of me because I was just out of control, didn't know what I was doing. So that, of course, was a very challenging time for us. Knowing that, hearing her talk about the fact in the 4th grade that she had to become the person that looked out for me because I was not capable of doing that. So it affected a lot, particularly with my children when they were young. And we're just getting to the place of getting in that journey of trying to heal. When I was diagnosed originally, I was like, somebody's lost their mind, and it's not me. So of course, I did not accept the diagnosis. My original diagnosis was paranoid, schizophrenic, manic depressive. And I kept figuring like, something wrong with you because I'm normal. There's nothing wrong with me, just leave me alone. So I didn't accept the diagnosis at all. Went years without accepting it, got clean off drugs and alcohol. Have been clean for over 20 years and still didn't recognize the behavior that was going on. Even while I was clean, I was still hospitalized. And the mental institution, particularly Sacramento Mental Health Center, which we call SMIC, was even in school and still was hospitalized while I was even in JC, initially starting my journey with my education. So I never got to an acceptance with that for years until finally in 2010, when my oldest daughter took me to the hospital because my behavior was so that she was afraid for my life. And that's when I finally took a look at and got some acceptance around the fact that maybe there is something wrong. So that's when my acceptance started, and that's when I actually, soon after, looked into NAMI. And my diagnosis over the years had changed from what I originally got to being bipolar 1 with manic depressive and anxiety. So that was basically the time I got to some acceptance. Recovery today is part of getting up out the bed. It starts with having to get up. I got to get up, and even when I don't want to. So that's where recovery starts for me. It's getting involved and accepting the fact that I'll have this for the rest of my life, even though there are times I'm like, I'm okay, because the medication says I'm okay. The acceptance and the recovery kind of fluctuates for me, because it's like, I'm okay, I'm not. For the most part, I'm med compliant, but a lot of times I may forget to take the medication, or it gets too late and I don't. And there are times when I do go and there's some time I'm like, okay, what's wrong with you? It's like, oh, you haven't taken your medication, so I'm off balance. I know right now I'm looking at the fact that for the last few months I've been in some depression, that I've called my doctor and have an appointment, because I have to kind of I'm working on monitoring myself to make sure I can stay in good recovery. And if that means my medication needs to be altered in some way, then I have to be okay with that. And that's a challenge again, because changing medication means having to adjust again. But I know in order to stay well, I may have to do that. So that's something I'm looking at. So recovery means doing what I need to do, whatever that means. Letting my doctor, my therapist, everybody know, the pharmacist, letting all these people know what's going on with me, so that I'll be able to be okay on a regular basis and function. Hopefully function at a level to totally be able to get my life where I can be able to be totally an asset to others, to let them know that recovery is possible, but it takes work. You know, my thing is that for individuals to know that mental illness is not a death sentence. It's an illness that is treatable. It requires medication. The one thing that a lot of time we say is that if a person has cancer, you're there to support them. And you ask them, what can you do? When we say there's a mental illness, you want to run away from us. We need the support of our loved ones and our families so that we can get better. A lot of time we want to isolate, and that's dangerous for us. And I know it's dangerous for me. Let me keep it on me. It's dangerous for me to isolate. So I know the love and support of my family and my children, my friends, even NAMI, has been what has kept me when I finally got to some real acceptance and came out of denial about my mental illness. And that's what keeps me now. Even when I want to let go, the fact that I have others makes me hold on.